Hello and welcome to the Dream Team Professor Podcast. My name is Scott, and in this episode, we're looking at the top players to target in Game Week 3 Sun Dream Team. Game Week 2 has been crazy. We've had multiple injuries. A lot of us have played our first substitution of the season. We've had top teams dumped out of, well, top teams might be strong, but we've had teams dumped out of the Carabao Cup as well, unexpectedly. And we've had some big hitters blanking as well, missing pens. So it has been an absolutely crazy one. Let us know in the chat how your week has gone or in the comments. Fixtures for game week 3. Now, things are still a little bit up in the air for sort of longer term fixtures, but game week 3 is definitely just a Prem only single game week. And then after that, we have an international break. So back to a couple boring weeks of no football. But after that, we are straight back in and the fixtures start coming thick and fast at that point. So game week 4 is going to be a double game week with Premier League paired with Champions League returning. So those Champions League sides will have Premier League plus Champions League. The teams that played in the Carabao Cup that progressed could play in game week 4. Their next round. The draw is on the left-hand side here. I'll go through that in a minute. We'll also have the teams that are in the Europa League playing their Carabao Cup matches this week. So Champions League will play in game week 4. Europa League matches won't play their Carabao Cup match until game week 5. While the rest of the draw has been done, we don't necessarily know when each of these teams are going to play. So obviously the teams that have Champions League will definitely be playing their Carabao Cup matches in game week 5. The Champions League teams and the Europa League teams can't play against each other because they're on alternate weeks. So they're separated. But the teams that have Europa League, they'll definitely be playing game week 4. Teams that will be playing Europa League sides or Champions League sides will be playing in game week 4 or game week 5, depending on who they've been drawn against. But we still also have the fact that Crystal Palace, their Europa Conference League match isn't due until game week 7, I believe it is, which means they can play in either game week 4 or game week 5 for Carabao Cup. And also the teams that are sort of just solely non-European sides playing each other or playing fixtures can still get their fixtures put into game week 4 or game week 5, depending on which way the sort of TV matches get scheduled. So it isn't fully sewn up at this point. So Arsenal, Port Vale, away at Port Vale in the Carabao Cup will go into 5. Swansea versus Nottingham Forest. So Forest, their Carabao Cup match will go into 4. Lincoln City versus Chelsea will go into game week 5 because they've got the Champions League in 4. The same for Tottenham at home to Doncaster. Brentford versus Aston Villa will go into game week 4 because in game week 5, Villa will be playing in the Europa League. Huddersfield, home to Manchester City, so that will go into game week 5. Liverpool versus Southampton will go into game week 5, and Newcastle, Bradford will go into game week 5. Wolves versus Everton could still be 4 or 5. Crystal Palace versus Millwall, 4 or 5. Burnley versus Cardiff, 4 or 5. Barnsley versus Brighton, 4 or 5. And Fulham versus Cambridge could be 4 or 5. So I don't think we're going to find out when those ones get scheduled for until next week. And just to make things even more complicated, we have the Champions League draw taking place tonight. So we don't know yet who the Premier League teams in the Champions League will be playing. And the Europa League draw will take place on Friday. So still loads more information to come to fill out this fixture ticker. But solely talking this week, game week 3. So Arsenal and Liverpool face off against each other, which is going to make their assets a bit less appealing this week. It's quite a difficult one for Arsenal and Liverpool, actually, if you're interested in their players, because obviously you don't particularly want Arsenal and Liverpool players playing against each other. You'd imagine it's going to be quite a tightly contested match. But Liverpool have Burnley away from home the week after. So the sort of question is like sort of a Gakpo or Ekitike. Do you want to buy them now, get the price rise, but then have a tough fixture where they could drop? And then Burnley after that is the game you want. So if you don't buy them this week and you want to buy them the week after just for Burnley, there is a chance that you're going to be buying these players when they're decreasing in price. It gets a little bit confusing with these price changes. And the same applies to Arsenal, for example. Like Gyökeres has just scored a brace. You may want Gyökeres for Forest at home the week after. But if Gyökeres doesn't do anything against Liverpool away from home, you're likely going to be buying him in for a price decrease ahead of Nottingham Forest. It may not pan out that way, but it adds another element to make the planning a little bit more confusing. So Arsenal, Liverpool, we will talk about them, but I don't think they're amazing assets just because the difficulty of the fixture. Man City have got Brighton away. Now, while City had a disappointing result against Spurs, I still think Brighton have been pretty disappointing this season. So I think Manchester City are appealing. You've got Newcastle, Leeds away from home, which typically would be a fixture that you would look to target. I know the newly promoted sides have been doing pretty well at home in their first round of games. But you would still look to target them. The only problem is Newcastle have just picked up a load of injuries and a suspension for Anthony Gordon. So we'll talk about them, but on the outside it looks quite good, but then when you start to dig into the players, it looks a bit tougher. Chelsea, Fulham at home. Now, Chelsea had a really good win against West Ham. A lot of people lost the patience after their draw in Game Week 1 against Crystal Palace, but they absolutely hammered the Hammers in Game Week 2. So I think Chelsea are going to be quite appealing because the fixture run looks good longer term. You've got Fulham, Brentford, Champions League, Man United away, which isn't looking as tough at the moment, Brighton. And then it finally gets a bit tougher in Game Week 7. Now, that might look a bit different if they get some tough Champions League matches put in there, but Chelsea at the moment are looking pretty decent. United have possibly the best looking fixture on paper this week with Burnley at home. But football isn't played on paper. And Man United have just been dumped out of the Carabao Cup against Grimsby away from home. Amrim's looking down, the players are looking down. What sort of effect is this going to have on Burnley at home? Villa, I'm going to leave them out at the moment. Now, Crystal Palace at home, again, it looks okay. Villa typically quite good at home. The fixtures look good long term. But they've had 2 disappointing results now in a row, I think. And most of their players are going to be sort of dropping or not rising. So I think we can probably wait and leave them out and maybe go for them the week after. Spurs, on the other hand, are looking fantastic, unfortunately. So Burnley at home, Bournemouth at home in the next fixture. Just done the job on Manchester City, which they seem to have a way of doing at the moment. And Thomas Frank has had a great start. So we'll be spending a bit of time looking at Tottenham. I'm going to leave Brighton out because they play City and they've been a little bit out of form. West Ham, don't really need to justify why we're leaving them out. But I would say if you've got Bowen in your team, he has been the bright spark still. So I'm not against if you wanted to keep Bowen still in your team. Crystal Palace have got Villa away. I won't spend too much time speaking about them, but I will have a section at the end for a few players that I do think could be potential value, but maybe the teams aren't the best to target at this week. Nottingham Forest, West Ham at home. If you do want to try and double down on targeting that West Ham fixture, which seems to be quite plumb at the moment, Nottingham Forest are there. Fulham, I'm going to leave out for this one away at Chelsea. Brentford, Sunderland away. Now, obviously, people moved off them after the Game Week 1 disappointment. We may now move back there for Game Week 2 after they looked all right. But all I would say is this is typically more because of the fixture being Sunderland away. But also, if you are stuck with players at a really, really cheap price point, there are a lot of players at Brentford that dropped the week before and you could pick up a bit cheaper to build a bit of budget. So I'll spend a tiny bit of time on them. You've got Wolves who are playing Everton at home. Everton obviously away at Wolves. Some nice players to target there potentially. And then Bournemouth away at Spurs. A lot of people went for Semenyo this week after the good game week. A little bit disappointed overall. But again, Bournemouth still a decent side, but now out of the Carabao Cup. So these are a few teams that we will be looking at. As always, if there's any players from other teams that you want to put in the comments below, I will happily have a chat with you about them. So let's start off by looking at Chelsea. So the main question this week is going to be Cole Palmer. Do we sell him or do we sub him? So Palmer, if you've got him in your team, I mean, a lot of people took him out last week to avoid the 0.3 drop, I think it was. Fair play. I think you got away with one. We'll see. I know a lot of people not got a lot of love for Palmer at the moment and his recent form, but I don't think you could tell me that Palmer wouldn't have returned in this game against West Ham. I know football doesn't quite work like that, but look at the names on the The sheet that returned, you've got Cucurella, Chalobah, Pedro, Caicedo, Esteval, Neto, and Fernandez. Everyone was at it in this game, and I think Palmer probably would have been too, but picked up an injury in the warm up, a groin injury. Maresca said that he was actually struggling for the last, I think he said 5 days. So thanks, Maresca. If he'd have let us know that a little bit earlier, I reckon a lot more people would have just not taken the chance and got him out there. But it looked like he was going to start. It looked like he was going to start on the right hand side, but then pulled out of the warm up. So a lot of people, myself included, decided to test out this new substitute rule where you can take a player out who does not play their first fixture and swap them for a player who still has a fixture to come or hasn't played yet in the game week. It happened so that Chelsea was the Friday night, so that pretty much opened the pool up to everyone. So this week, by all means, you could just sell him if you have no other problems in your team. But I'm seeing a lot of teams at the moment who are sat on sort of 3, 4 injuries this week. So Saka, Ballard, Palmer, Rutter, to name a few. I'm not against using a sub again this game week if you are in a situation like that. If you do think there is a player with a really decent upside that you could replace him with, we'll obviously talk about a few in this video. I have seen people say, and it's a fair point, that substitutions will be more effective in a double game week, which is a fair point. But I just don't think you really are going to know when these injuries are going to happen, and if they're going to happen to key players. You could get an injury in a double game week. You might want to use a sub, but it could just be a 3.5 mid or someone lower value. When it's someone as big as Cole Palmer of that value, and it opens it up to buying a sort of big hitter potentially with a nice fixture and a single, I'm still not against it. Especially if you feel like you've got off to a fairly slow start and you want to try and at least get 11 players out, something like that this game week. I'm not against subbing Cole Palmer out. So you could keep him in your team, wait and see. Chelsea happen to be the first fixture again this week. So if he doesn't start, doesn't play, you can then look to move him on to someone else using your sub. João Pedro is interesting for this game week. Would have been gutted if you did take him out last week after his price drop from 4.5 to 4.3. This week, he's grabbed the goal. He's had 2 assists. He started with Delap. So Delap started as a striker. Pedro started a little bit deeper. And he's played the full 90 as well, something that we don't typically see or haven't seen him do for Chelsea yet. Still to be decided, but you'd imagine that he also does end up taking penalties with no Palmer. I know Delap can also take penalties and is a good taker, but I think João Pedro's got that sort of main man vibe going on at Chelsea. I think he's desperate to be the main man at that team. So I think Pedro would step up if they do get a penalty without Palmer. 2 midfield options who I do also like, Enzo at 4.3 and Neto at 4 million. So Neto, goal and an assist in this match, 13 points, and then Neto, goal, 10 points. I think I would just opt for the cheaper in Neto at the moment. They're both taking corners, which is helping for bonus points and also attacking returns. Chelsea are looking really good attacking these corners as well this week. So I think either of them decent options. I think Enzo, you kind of know a little bit more that you're nailed on, but with some of the injuries they've got there, I think Neto is also looking really, really good. In defence, so Chalobah at 3.5, got 10 points, a goal, and will be due a nice 0.3 rise, we think. So I expect this centre-back pairing to stay with Adebayo and Chalobah at centre-back, but there is always the chance that they do still sign someone with the window open. They have also got Fofana on the bench. They've got Achiapong and Hato, who can also play at centre-back. So there are still options, but it does seem like Chalobah and Adebayo are the centre-back pairing at the moment. I was fortunate enough to bring Chalobah in this game week. I got potentially a little bit lucky with this goal, but you take it. I was a bit annoyed that my guy Diouf, who I took out, assisted a goal to wipe that clean sheet so early. So that goal came as a relief to me. So I think Chalobah is a nice option, but he's not going to score every week. And to be honest with you, when I did bring in Chalobah, it was mostly because it was someone that fitted that price point that I needed, not because of the attacking threat. And if anything, I do try to opt for fullbacks over centre-backs. A fullback who is playing really well at the minute is Cucurella at 4.8, so he's grabbed an assist and he's had bonus in both matches so far this season. So I think if you can afford Cucurella at 4.8, obviously do it. But Chalobah obviously does fit a price point that's a lot easier to fit. On to Spurs, so back-to-back clean sheets for them. Thomas Frank's tactical play or the way he sets up the team does definitely seem to be helping this Tottenham defence at the minute. You wouldn't have seen many back-to-back clean sheets for Spurs last season. The next 4 in the league look fine for them as well. So it's Bournemouth at home, West Ham away. They'll have Champions League, Brighton away, followed by Carabao Cup, and then Wolves at home and Champions League again in game week 6, followed by Leeds in game week 7. So I do think longer term, the fixtures are there for Spurs if you do want to start getting them in your team while they're at a nice price as well. Porro 5.1, so didn't get any extra points in terms of sort of bonus and stuff, but still had 2 shots in this game. Not shot on target, but nice opportunities. He's taking corners as well. It's a great pick, and we've got historical data that shows that Porro is a really, really solid dream team pick. So I don't mind if you want to get that in there straight away. We are going to mention Nouri in a minute. If you did have that injury and you can get to Porro, I think that's quite a nice switch, or even get to Cucurella from the last slide. I don't mind that at all. Kudus at 4.8. Now, not the best week for him. Only the 3 points, 1 ppm off bonus this week, but it was Man City. The fixtures look better after this. And again, we know that he seems to be solid for bonus, taking corners, gets the odd attack in return as well. So I do think long-term, Kudus is a nice pick. It's not the pick that's going to be the real budget building pick this week, but I still think longer term, I think that's a really nice one. I'd go Romero still over Van de Ven in defence if you wasn't going for Porro already. I know Spence is still an option. Udogie wasn't on the bench. Spence hasn't quite done the same in terms of bonus as he was doing last season. So I don't know if something has changed there. Maybe one to watch. He's still going to be an okay option there. But I do think Romero looks really like proactive when it comes to getting those extra points. Like Ven always seems to be the guy that sort of sweeps up those sort of balls in behind. Still really good performance against Man City. But the way the points are on Dream Team, it feels like someone like Romero, who's going in for the tackles and attacking the ball, seems to be getting a few more points in terms of tackle points, bonus points. He's just an all-round more aggressive style of defender. So I think I would go for Romero over Ven, but again, both really nice options and both should be getting a rise after that clean sheet. 2 players who I think are options this week, but not really my cup of tea is Brennan Johnson, 4.7. So he's had back-to-back goals now. And we know he's a streaky player. There was a point last season where I can't remember how many goals it was exactly, but he went on a goal-scoring streak and just plays with so much confidence when he is on one of these runs. And he seems like he could be on the start of one of these runs at the moment. And then Richarlison, 3.3. So he's grabbed an assist, and it was 1 goal, 1 assist the week before. So again, 3.3 million is a really nice price if you did want to get the starting striker for Spurs currently. But how long is he going to keep Slanky out? I don't know. I mean, you're going to have to keep playing him while he is in this kind of form, but Slanky overall is the better player, isn't he, I think. Let's look at Man City. So I started this thinking Man City are going to be really nice to target this week, but as I started to go through the options, I started to be less inspired. So it's Brentford away this week, Manchester United at home next week, paired with a Champions League match, which we don't know yet what it will be. But Nouri picked up an injury. I imagine he's going to miss Brighton now. Easy switches could be Cucurella or Porro, like I said. But I wouldn't really replace him with another City defender. They've got Vardiol out at the moment. And then when you look at the rest of the defenders, I do think there could be rotation there. You think Diaz tends to be nailed. I always feel like Stones is an injury waiting to happen. Rico Lewis has started back-to-back games, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Mateus Nunes comes in. And then when you look, Ake came in for Nouri, but he always has sort of injury troubles himself, doesn't seem to last many games in a row. It's worrying. You've got O'Reilly, who's another lefty who could possibly come in. I know that Pep does like to play a left footer, so O'Reilly or Ake's probably going to come in for Nouri, but I would just dodge these defenders at the minute and wait and see. Only Haaland, Oscar Bob and Reinders All plus Gonzalez actually stayed from game week 1. So the midfield and the attack, other than those guys, could again be a bit of a worry. Haaland at 7.7, he's going to get a point 0.2 drop, but I'd still hold him. I wouldn't be worried about that at all. He's a player that he's going to go up and down in price, but do you think he's overvalued or undervalued at 7.7? I think he's going to be around that sort of price all season, maybe as low as 7 and then as high as kind of what he is now, or maybe up to 8 if he's on fire, but I think it's probably going to be a fair price. Missed a big chance, but I think he's a captaincy candidate for game week 3, and we'll have a look at captaincy in a bit. If you did go for Reinders last week, you brought him in because he did well the week before. Is he now a worse player because he had a quiet game? No, I still think he's a solid option. I think Brighton's a good fixture. So if I had Reinders, I'd still keep him unless you really are desperate for that budget building. Defence, like I mentioned, is a worry. I think I'm going to treat the rest of City, other than sort of Erling Haaland, as a wait and see till after the international break now. Wait until that Champions League comes, because then when you have the double game week, if you do want to take a punt on a Foden or a Doku, worst case scenario, if they don't start one game, you might get the other. The same happened with Newcastle for me. So again, I liked the look of this Leeds away fixture to potentially target. I know I made that mistake with Everton, but Everton then bounced back the week after. So it's really hard to get a gauge at this early point in the season. What is a good fixture, what isn't, who's a good team, who isn't. But at the moment, I thought Newcastle looked pretty good against Liverpool. Very unlucky with that result, I think. Anthony Gordon, 3-match ban for that tackle on Virgil van Dijk. Probably was a fair red card, or it was a fair red card, but now puts him in a bit of trouble here. So red card for Gordon, 3-match ban. Fabian Schär, I think I saw he had concussion. Joe Linton and Tonali both went off injured as well. So they are some real key players in this Newcastle team. So maybe you fancy Leeds. Maybe you fancy Leeds with all this rotation going to be needed for Newcastle in the next match. You've got Livramento, 4.2, had a good game, so 7 points, 10 ppm, free bonus. But then with these injuries to the defence and the rest of the team, the core of the team, that price, would you not try and just get to Cucurella or get to... I mean, Porro's still about a mil away, but I think I would just leave it for now. Bruno Guimaraes, 4.9, goal, 9 points. He's been a solid pick on Dream Team for everything. Tackles, big chances. A bit like Fernandez. He seems to score points in a whole host of different ways, or maybe a bit more similar to like a Declan Rice, for example. But again, with 2 of that big 3 in midfield potentially missing, I think I would just dodge. If I did want to take a punt, it would be Elanga or Harvey Barnes at 4 million. But both, again, that price point, there are teams with probably better fixtures now that aren't going to get a drop like Elanga of 0.2. Barnes is due to stay the same, but I think there's better options elsewhere. My team, Arsenal, so impressive 5-0 win against Leeds. I did expect that we would do something like this. I wasn't too worried about that first match against Man United, because game state just plays such a part in each game. Once Arsenal got that first goal against Manchester United, the temptation is to sit deep. It's away from home. We struggle at United at times, so I think this match was always going to be quite a bit different. But Bukayo Saka was in my team, and he is one of the players who picked up an injury in this match. Hamstring injury. I imagine he's going to miss the Liverpool game unless Arteta's playing mind games here, but I imagine he's probably going to miss a bulk of games. I think I've seen that Man City game in game week 5 spoken about as a potential return date, but it could even be later, maybe game week 6. So we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's a transfer out now if you've got him. I think Madueke will come straight in at right wing. So Madueke started the game at left wing, but as soon as Saka got injured, switched back over to that right-hand side. I think it's going to be Madueke on that right-hand side. It's what he's bought for. If he's been bought to be the Saka backup and potentially compete on the left-hand side, if Saka was to get injured straight away and then Madueke wasn't starting right wing, I don't think that's going to go down well. I think that's what he was bought for, and I think that's what he'll do. So Madueke 3.7, not a bad price, but I think, again, still wait and see what he can do for us. Ødegaard picked up a shoulder injury in this game. That doesn't seem to be as serious, but I don't know if that Liverpool game is going to come too soon for him. So Odegaard, not a pick and probably still a sell. Victor Gyökeres got off the mark for Arsenal, so he had a quite nice solo goal with Calafiori putting the ball over the top for him to sort of run into, and it really was a solo goal, that one. So he doesn't look comfortable dribbling with the ball. He doesn't really look in control of the ball, but when he gets started running, he just looks like a battering ram. I'm surprised it's just how sort of bulky he looks when he's running. It doesn't look natural at all, but it was a really nice goal. Brace, he took a pen after that. People were calling for the 15-year-old Max Dowman to take the pen, but Gyökeres was like, not a chance. This is mine, and convincingly took it. I think he will be the pen taker for Arsenal now. I know Saka wasn't on the pitch, but he's got the taste for goals. He's got the taste for the pens. I think he's gonna keep it now. That was the rumor anyway. I don't hate the idea of getting him in earlier now. I know it's a Liverpool fixture, but they have been got at by these last two teams that they've played, and it is those runs in behind that have sort of troubled them. And it did seem like in that first half, Arsenal did sort of struggle a little bit to create much against Leeds, and it did seem like there was a bit of a change of idea in the second half, with more passes being sort of played over the top or into the channels with Gyökeres, and I think that could be something that we try to do against Liverpool. So I'm not against getting him in for the 0.3 rise if you really want him for that home match against Nottingham Forest and then the Champions League match, which we don't know what it is yet. It's City after that in Game Week 5, so it is tough still. And I imagine he won't play the Carabao Cup in Game Week 5. So fixtures aren't necessarily the best, but if you do want him for that home fixture against Forest, I'm not against going for it against Liverpool. But yeah, how many goals do you expect us to score against Liverpool? That is the question. Eze, 5.4. Now, we will start to talk about him in contention because he's now signed for Arsenal. And I'm expecting that he's going to start. I think he's going to get thrown in for his first game against Liverpool, either on that left-hand side, left wing, or possibly at sort of 10 or one of those 8s with Odegaard being out. So I think he will play. We'll have to wait and see if he produces the same sort of like bonus and attacking threat they did at Crystal Palace. I think he will, but I think it is a bit of a high price for something that is not exactly certain. Calafiori, 3.8 million, so back-to-back clean sheets now. He's had 2 assists in this game to go with the goal that he scored in the game before. I do think he will start Liverpool now. I think it's a really tough game. He's performed well in the 2 prior games. I still don't think it's a nailed position. If people ask me, is Calafiori nailed 100% every game? I don't think he is. I still don't think he is, but I think he will be trusted now for this Liverpool game away from home. But I don't think we've seen the last of Lewis Skelly, certainly. Timber, 4.7. I think he will be nailed for this Liverpool game. Brace and assist, 28 points. Now, Ben White hasn't been seen in training and was missing from this squad. So Ben White obviously started the first fixture, but Timber back in for this one and absolutely smashed it with a 28-pointer. So you could go for Timber this week, but again, there's an international break in between, and there is a chance that we do see Ben White come back into the fold at some point come game week 4. Liverpool, so like I said, defence looking a little bit suspect, but again, they just keep getting it done, don't they? I'm looking at this game week 3, Arsenal at home. I don't think it's the typical fixture that you would want to target, but with both Arsenal and Liverpool, fixtures after that look quite nice. So game week 4, Liverpool have got Burnley away with a Champions League match, and in game week 5, it's Everton at home and a Carabao match, which we expect there'll be rotation, but Everton and Burnley, 2 fixtures you would want to target with Liverpool, so it puts you in a bit of a predicament. Do you want to buy the attackers like Ekatike or Gakpo now, get the sort of 0.1 rise out of them, in the assumption that maybe they drop after Arsenal, but at least you kind of haven't lost in the long term? Or do you wait and then get them in for Burnley, even if they are on like a 0.2, 0.3 drop potentially? I mean, they could score and do well, but yeah, it really is a hard thing to weigh up when you are looking into these price changes and budget building. But nonetheless, Ekatike, football terms, is smashing it. So back-to-back goals in the Premier League, and then obviously scored in the game before in the Community Shield. 2 goals, 1 assist now this season. And yeah, he does look the real deal. He would be probably the top candidate for game week 4 to game week 6 if you were looking alongside Salah. But if you did go without Salah this season and you went for sort of Ekatike or Gakpo and Gakpo to cover, I think you're still in a good position at the moment. 4.8 Gakpo, 2 assists, 1 goal, 2 assists this season. Both of those two are outscoring Salah so far this season. But Salah does keep popping up still at the end of games. Now, Ekatike and Gakpo do keep getting these early subs. It wasn't particularly early in this Newcastle game. But Salah just seems to stay on the longest regardless, and he does still just keep popping up with goals. Now, you can either view that 2 ways. You can either view that as in Salah is getting lucky. I imagine if you haven't got Salah, that's the way you're seeing it. Salah's getting lucky at the end of games and getting bailed out. But could you also see that as in he's still getting his attacking returns even in the games where he's quiet? When these games do come up where he does have a great game, is he going to absolutely haul? So I'm still happy just keeping hold of Salah at the minute, but I must say I am looking to potentially consider maybe adding an Ekatike or Gakpo for game week 4, but it isn't entirely easy with budget. I think at the moment we've seen not enough from Wirtz to consider him an option. Disappointing again, and it kind of, I mean, it could easily change by the time we come around to Burnley or even against Arsenal, but at the moment, again, I'm seeing him as the guy that's kind of making things tick in the middle, but not necessarily getting those final actions that are going to get you the goals and assists. He's putting in plenty of corners, so that could be an avenue to points eventually. But at the moment, I think you can still just wait and see how he gets on. There's plenty of other good options. Forest, so good fixture, followed by Arsenal away, but this West Ham one does look like a hit and wilder down kind of opportunity. Carabao Cup comes before Europe for Forest, and I imagine in that Carabao Cup it's going to be a chance for new faces. They've had so many new signings. I think you'll be lucky to get sort of 2 starts in that game week 4. So you could just be staring at an Arsenal single. But in isolation, game week 3, West Ham at home, it looks good. Wood will be dropping in price after his 2-pointer this week. But again, he's a nice shout for this West Ham home match. You've got Callum Hudson-Odoi, 3.7, so he's had a goal. He's on 16 points now for the season. Had a good return the week before for bonus points, so I think it could be one that's on the radar, maybe sort of come European football time. And then Dan Ndoye, 3.3 million, a really nice price points, had back-to-back returns now, so assist this week to go with his goal the week before. Nice budget option for Europe, but again, still just the depth is maybe a bit of the concern. I think he's fine for game week 3, but then if you look at game week 4, Arsenal away, Carabao Cup, where they could bring in sort of Amari Hutchinson or Jesus or McAtee, I don't love it. I'd potentially wait till 5 or 6. Defensively, I'm quite happy to see that they haven't yet kept a clean sheet. I'm hoping that the guys like Sells, Milenkovic, Aina, Williams might keep dropping a little bit on the build up to game week 5 when Europe starts. And then hopefully we could pick up a couple of cheap enablers from these teams who are typically defensively quite sound. Man United. What do we do with Man United? So knocked out of the Carabao Cup, things seem to be turning a little bit rotten. It was also promising after that loss against Arsenal where they played well. Everyone thought they were the better team and it was looking good. And then Fulham comes and it's a draw and it's a not amazing performance. Cunha, maybe the bright spark in that match, but Bruno disappointing, missing a pen. But now, after being knocked out of the Carabao Cup, that interview with Amarim, he seemed really downbeat. He seemed to be laying into the players a little bit. It is all a bit worrying. No potential doubles now in game week 4, game week 5. They will just typically be a single game week side up until sort of FA Cup time now. So, yeah, Man United players have definitely gone off the radar a lot quicker than we possibly expected. So, Bruno Fernandes was my captain this week. Missed a pen. Did still get 3 bonus tackles. It could have been a really solid week if he'd put that penalty away, but skied it over the bar after the referee horribly crashed into him and put him off. But I think he will still be on penalties. He was one of the guys that stepped up and slotted two away in a crazy penalty shootout. But he was only just a substitution on at half time for that game against Grimsby. So not a great week. 4 points against Fulham, and then off the bench, 3 points against Grimsby. You take it, but you wanted a lot more, and it could have been a lot more. One thing that was concerning in that Grimsby match is he seemed to have lost some of his corners to Mason Mount, which he didn't seem to have lost in the Arsenal game or the Fulham game. I don't know. It seemed to be a bit of a, last hurrah against Grimsby, where he was sort of playing almost like a sweeper role, just smashing it back up the pitch every time it dropped off deep. So, yeah, maybe not too much to read into on that one. Cunha, 2 starts, 9 points this week, but still hasn't got his first goal. He did get bonus in the game against Grimsby, still did look dangerous in the game against Fulham. So I think he is still an option, but not the best return from him. And then Mbumo got his first goal off the bench in the Carabao Cup. Still very unlucky, I think, not to get an assist in the Fulham game as well, taking corners. So there is still threat there with Mbumo and Cunha. And it just depends what sort of narrative you want to put on this Burnley game. It is a prime fixture to target, but again, it's not on paper. Do you weigh into it the sort of emotional effect of getting dropped out of the cup? Maybe there's a sort of bad sort of vibe in the changing room. We don't know. We don't know what Amarim's going to be like. I still think I would try to ignore it and still target this fixture. But let me know what you think. Do you think no go now for United, or are you still interested in going once more and trying to get something out of this Burnley match? I don't mind the idea of possibly swapping my Palmer with a substitution to maybe one of Mbeumo or Cunha. I've already got Bruno Fernandes in my team. I still don't mind doubling up for this Burnley fixture. Let me know what you think. I'm going to try and speed through a few best of the rest or enablers that might just be useful to your squad. So Jack Grealish, I didn't want to go there early doors until we saw him play. He's played twice or started twice this week with the Prem and the Carabao Cup, getting 2 assists against Brighton. So looks like he's going to be a regular, and 3.2 seems to be a nice price. You've got Ndai, 3.9. Didn't play the Carabao Cup, but grabbed his goal in the Premier League. Just 64 minutes though, early sub. I think he did have an injury precaution, but he was on the bench for the Carabao Cup, so he should be fine. 2 shots on target, 3 tackles. Ismail Assar now had left Crystal Palace out of this episode, but I still think he's a good option. He's going to get a rise, 3.8. Maybe steps up as main man for Palace. In Eze's absence, 10 points, a goal. But Europe comes a bit later for Crystal Palace if they get past their qualifying match. They do typically go quite strong in the Carabao Cup, so we'll have to wait and see what they do there. But Sarr, decent option. Strand Larsen, he had been promising, I thought, in the first 2 Premier League matches, but nothing really to show for it. Came off the bench for 17 minutes and grabbed a brace in the Carabao Cup. He has been linked away to Newcastle, but it seems like Wolves are standing firm there. So Everton at home could be a nice fixture. A lot of people transferred in Semenyo last week to get the 0.3 rise. He's now got an away match against Spurs, which looks quite tough on paper, but I do feel like Bournemouth are a side who can score against anyone. I think he's a hold, and I wouldn't necessarily buy. 45 minutes in the Carabao Cup was a little bit disappointing, but 6 points for an assist. Tavernier, 2.6, so he's going to get a nice rise if you are on that budget building hype, or if you've got a really cheap player you want to replace. 2.6 is a nice price point, 0.3 rise. Scored points in a variety of ways, including a goal in that last match. The only thing I would say with Bournemouth is they've got some new signings that are coming in, and Clivert did come back also in the Carabao Cup. Truffert at 2.8, the fullback replaced Kirkes for Bournemouth. He's looking pretty attacking. He's going to get a rise at 0.3. Bournemouth do seem, I know they've had a couple tough games to start, but they do seem like they're going to be a fairly solid defence still. Senesi, 2.2, really, really cheap centre-back at Bournemouth. Could fill a gap for you if you're trying to get someone like Ballard out of your team. Bowen, like I mentioned earlier, 5 million. I think I'd just hold him. If I had him, he's still looking good when West Ham are looking bad. Berg at 2.4 million from Brentford, drew a 0.3 rise. He played in both matches this week, got clean sheets in both as well. Coyote at 2.3. Now, we took him out last week, and He's got Sunderland this week, and he was unlucky not to get an assist. He took one of those monster throws that we talked about. Someone got in the end of it, scored it, but it was ruled out. You've got Igor Thiago at 2.8 as well. Has already scored 2 goals this season. 9 points in the first match. 9 points in the cup match and 4 points against Villa. Not a bad return, but seems to be only due a zero point 0.1 rise, so not the best. But a few options there that sort of help out with a price point if you are trying to make a sort of cheaper sub. Captaincy this week. So this is a tough one. I've already spoken about United and Burnley. I think it depends on what you think of Man United at the moment, but I still think Bruno, Cunha, and Mbumo for the fixture are okay to target. I've still currently got it on Bruno Fernandes, but I'd be lying if I said that last night didn't dent my confidence slightly. I think if you're unsure, I think Haaland, Brighton away, still a nice fixture. Haaland is, I know he didn't score last week, but he is always typically a reliable option. And Brighton have been leaking goals. Chelsea, Fulham at home. So if we do find out that sort of Palmer is going to be out, I think Pedro will be on pens. He had a decent performance the week before. We know he's going to start. So I think Pedro could be an outside shout. Spurs, I don't mind the Bournemouth home fixture, but I think Kudus and Porro sort of scream captaincy option to me. I do think they're reliable for points, but I don't know. Don't really feel like captains. And then, of course, Salah at home to Arsenal. Now, you'd think that Arsenal's defence would be quite off-putting still, but Salah is Salah. He scored plenty of goals against Arsenal. And if you're really feeling punty and you do think Liverpool's defence is a bit leaky, Victor Gyökeres, I think main man at Arsenal at the moment, especially with these injuries. I know Odegaard and Saka out would be a big loss. I do think if we're lining up with something like Gyökeres, Eze, and Madueke, or Martinelli, Gyökeres, Madueke with Eze behind, we could see kind of a bit of a different counter-attacking, more direct Arsenal. So it is an option, but currently I'm leaning Bruno at the moment. Team update for game week 2 then. So 66 points. Let us know how you got on this week and drop a like on the video if you haven't already. 135 points in total. So overall rank is 103k at the moment, 938. So big old rank still at the minute. It doesn't feel like I've had 2 good weeks. The first week was terrible. This week a little bit better looking at some of the mini leagues I'm in. Roof's in goal. His heroics last week weren't continued, so just a 1 point from him. Didn't play in the cup. Ballard started, had a big chance created, but then was subbed after, was it 6 minutes? But the good thing about this is he didn't play the sort of minimum requirement to get a price change. It was 9 minutes. Didn't play the minimum requirement, so I think he is going to just hold his price. So it's not a real issue at the moment, especially when you've got other injuries. Chalobah, eyeball in for Diouf, and Ballard came in for Kiyode. So 12 points there. Typically, Diouf got an assist, but did concede a load of goals. And Kiyode kept a clean sheet. So not the best transfers, but I think going forward, I'm happy to have Chalobah. O'Brien at the back got a clean sheet in the first fixture. Disappointed they didn't start the second. Tarkowski and Keane started, but then Seamus Coleman came in O'Brien's spot, and Mikalenko returned back from injury to go at left back. So I think a bit unlucky there that O'Brien didn't play the second one, but still 9 points is fine. He played 3 minutes in the second game, so I'm hoping that doesn't affect his price change. Saka, 8 points. Again, disappointed, like goal, 53 minutes played. You would have felt like there was a lot more for him in that match if he didn't go off injured. I think I was quite unlucky with Bruno Fernandes here. So 14 points with the armband. Again, 4 points in a game where he missed a pen. So he got a -3 for missing the pen, which cancelled out his 3 bonus points. He still got 2 tackles, a shot on target, and played the full 90. So if that pen had gone in, I think it would have been a pretty mega haul. Only 3 points in the second match. Then Cole Palmer. So I decided that I would substitute him out. I was actually quite tempted by Mbumo in that second fixture, but that was under the pretense that Man United were going to absolutely batter Grimsby. But it wasn't the case. Mbumo was actually benched. Did come on and score. But I decided I was taking on a lot of the crowd who had transferred in Semenyo already. And I also saw a lot of people captain Semenyo. I thought he was a good pick, but I wasn't willing to take out one of my big hitters to accommodate him. Um, I decided I'd just bring him in as a safety play as my substitute. Um, yeah, 7 points. It's a little bit disappointing from a potential double. Dewsbury Hall, now 3 points on paper looks pretty terrible, but I think there is still some bright sparks there. He had a big chance created. He did at one point get up to maximum bonus as 12 ppm, but then dropped off. So 88% pass completion, 2 successful crosses, 1 successful dribble, 3 fouls won. Also helped him. 1 interception, but then conceded 2 fouls and picked up a yellow card late on as well. So I think it could have been a lot more from Dewsbury Hall. He fell from 5 points to 3 points overnight. Salah with 7 with that late assist. Haaland with 3 in the blank, and then Fulkrug is stinking the place up with a 2-pointer. So he's someone I'll be looking to potentially move out. So initial thinking for transfers in game week 2. So I've got Ballard injured, I've got Saka injured, I've got Palmer injured, and I've got Fulkrug absolutely stinking up the place due a 0.2 drop. So the way I'm thinking of this at the moment, we think Ballard could be okay after the international break, so it's not a big deal. He's not due a drop. He could potentially stay in the team. You'd look at Saka and Palmer as your two that if you take them both out, you can pretty much pick anyone because of the sheer amount of money that they're taking up in my team. So they would be the two that sort of made sense to move out the most. Fulkrug still could score me points up top, but we'll be getting a 0.2 drop, which is a little bit annoying. I'm a little bit behind on budget already. I'm on 50.4 after a disappointing first game week. So budget does need to still be on my mind this week. The way I'm thinking at the moment is Saka. I don't think he's going to be back for Liverpool, and I'm doubtful that he's going to be back in the short term. So I think I will be taking out Saka. And then I'm not against using a substitution on Palmer this week. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave Palmer there. Hopefully he'll be back, but otherwise I can sub him out. He's the first fixture. So I'm going to leave him there. And then it's between Ballard and Fulkrug. And I know I typically always would choose points over price rises, I think. But he's taken up a striker spot as well. And it even sort of got him away this week when I potentially wanted to bring a striker in as my substitute. I think I might just leave Ballard there. I don't think a swap on Ballard is going to really bring me a ton of points. So I'm thinking leave Ballard. He's not doing too much damage at that price. He's not going to do any damage to my budget. Then I can free up a striker spot and a midfield spot who are the sort of big hitting positions in my team. I do like the idea of aiming for Chelsea players and Spurs players for those FA Cup matches. Champions League matches in Game Week 4. Obviously, I could do that with Arsenal and Liverpool as well, and Newcastle, but I've spoken about them playing each other and not being thrilled with Newcastle for this upcoming week. So I'm liking the look of Spurs and Chelsea. I think an easy option to look at this week is João Pedro. Now, I know it looks a bit of a case of he'd done the points last week, get him in. That definitely weighs into the 0.3 rise. But I think it's also if you think Palmer is out, we've seen now that Pedro probably gets more minutes. And if he doesn't start at striker, he's still going to start at 10. And I think he probably will get pens if Palmer's not there. So I do like Pedro there. I think he's looking fairly good for Chelsea so far since joining. And then Pedro and Porro. I quite like the idea of Porro this week, but I'm 0.1 out already. Budget building, not important. Definitely is, because a few of you could probably do that move potentially, but I can't. So I'm thinking, I know budget is always on the mind, but I think I made a mistake early on not going for Kudus in my team. I know he hasn't had the best week this week, so just the 3 points this game week, so he's not going to get a significant rise. He's probably actually going to get a 0.1 drop. But I think if I get Kudus in my team, he probably is going to stay in there for a fair bit of time. We know he's got historic at he's sort of getting bonus points and he's taking set pieces, and Spurs are looking pretty good. So at the moment, I'm feeling possibly doing this with my team, sort of Jab Hedger up top, Kudus in midfield. And then if I did want to make a sub for Palmer, he could really become anyone, but Palmer, I've got the option to take Palmer out and go Porro if I wanted to go Porro because I couldn't afford him anyway. I could do it with potentially a Cunha or an Mbumo if I wanted to double up on the Man United. I can't go Cunha if I bring in João Pedro because of the extra striker spot. You can't play 4 strikers with a sub, but I could definitely go Mbumo potentially to double up and try and get something out of that Burnley at home fixture if I do feel like I'm trusting Man United enough. But I do think there's options there if I don't feel thrilled with the options or anyone going into this match, then maybe I could just leave it this week. But I don't like the idea of playing with 9 players if I do it this way round. If you've enjoyed that, please do leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and head over to the Dream Team Tonic podcast for extra Dream Team info. Get any comments in below if you've got any questions, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.